the March 2021 version of Tuesday's Children, Getting Your Foot Stuck in the Door. I'm sorry, not stuck in the door. Getting Your Foot in the Door. I'm Fred Strobel. I have been involved with Tuesday's Children since 2012 and been on the board, involved in the Career Resource Center, and have been doing presentations like this for quite a while now. I am, just to give you 2 minutes about me, I am a human resources person by trade. I have been doing HR from the moment I was born, although at least it seems that way at this point. I graduated from St. John's University in 1994, started in HR just about immediately, and have been doing it ever since. I run HR globally for a company called TradeWeb, which is a financial services technology organization based in New York City, although I have been based right here in this fine location in Port Washington, Long Island, since March of 2020, and still can't believe that I'm still here. So welcome. We're going to go through a presentation today. We will stop at the end for questions. I just wanted to ask, I think everybody's muted. If you're not, if you could just please put yourselves on mute. I'm going to introduce my co-host, John Egan. John and I had the pleasure of meeting. I don't know if it was that much longer after 2012, but it was a couple of years after I got involved in the Career Resource Center. I actually met him at one of our Career Resource Center sessions, and he has officially been graduated the last few years to doing this with me. So I'll let John introduce himself and turn it over to him for a minute.
Thanks, Fred. It's always good to do this stuff with you, and hopefully I'll be able to see you in person again, because you're much more fun in person than your jokes virtually. But I guess that's just part of the whole fatigue of virtual life that we're dealing with at the moment. Hi, everyone. It's really good to be here virtually with you. A little bit about myself. I got involved with Tuesday's Children because I lost my father and my aunt in 9/11. I was 18 at the time. So by the time I was, Tuesday's Children was up and running, I was a bit older. And when I got to New York after I graduated Boston College in 2005, I met Terry and, tried to jump in as much as I can and involved with the organization. But it's good to be here with you. Fred's the HR guru here. He certainly knows that, kind of the right things to do and the right things to not do. I'm more of a free flying sales guy. I was a recruiter for about 5 years. So I was in the headhunting business and, understand what it takes to interview and find jobs and navigate through companies. And now I do commercial insurance sales. So, working with all types of businesses and organizations across the world and, trying to sell myself and my company to them. So it's good to be here with you all and be here with you, Fred.
So John sells himself a little short. I think that one of the best things about doing these types of presentations and being in this type of environment, and especially something that has become extremely apparent to everybody in the last year, is that there were a lot of rules to the road about interviewing and career management and networking, and everything in the last year has changed. And in a lot of ways, I'm the eternal optimist. I actually think it's changed in some ways for the better. It's made some things easier, which we'll talk about. And it made some ways of connecting and networking and finding opportunities easier than they were in the past. Not that any of this stuff's easy, but it does give you a little bit of an opportunity to have entree into people that you might not have thought about before. So I hope we'll get a chance to share some of that stuff with you today. I made the mistake of telling Deanna I was going to have control of the PowerPoint, which will be a mistake that we'll learn about for the next hour or so. We're going to talk about the interview. This is part of the process that we all talk about in being considered for a role, be considered for a job. I think that it goes without saying that when you're in the process of trying to interview for a job in the past, things have obviously changed quite a bit, because now all of our interviews are being done through a video screen. But But there are some things that don't really change in terms of how and what you do to control and manage yourself from an interview perspective, which we're going to talk about. The first thing that we always talk about from the perspective of being responsible for interviewing for a job is preparation. The reason why preparation is important is because preparation helps you with your nerves. And the reason why you want to be prepared from a nerves standpoint is that obviously when you're interviewing for a job and you're trying to think about the things that you're going to try to present your best self, the more time you spend thinking about the things that you need to know and the less stress you have to worry about things that you don't know, preparing for that information that you need to know walking into the interview is going to help you. And doing that will provide you with some context that'll make you find that the next few things will be a little easier, which is small things matter and not forgetting to breathe. Preparation is important for a few reasons. First is that from the perspective of knowing the place that you're interviewing, knowing how you're interviewing, and knowing what you're going to be able to do to connect to the person that you're interviewing with. Now, I always use an example in the past that I've never showed up for an interview any less than a half hour before I was supposed to be at the office building that I'm going to interview in. That was a thing that I've always felt from a career standpoint that was important for me, mostly because I'd rather be sitting outside in my car or sitting downstairs at a coffee shop waiting and composing myself and thinking about what I'm going to say as opposed to rushing and running into a building last minute, worrying about whether I'm going to be late or how long it's going to take me to get through security. 2020 has taught me that that's really cute. That really doesn't happen as much in the last year as it has. And in some cases, that might actually change forever. We may never have a situation where that's going to happen that way again. Why does that matter? And that is something that you have to be careful about when you're thinking through what we would call the chances of you knowing and understanding what's important from a Zoom perspective. What's the link? How do you know where the link is? Making sure that you know a place that you can go that's comfortable that you can get to. That's something that's important. So I have a slide here. Did that work? That focuses on the preparation. Everybody see that? Just nod your head.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Making sure you Google the company that you're interviewing for. Knowing information about the company, knowing information about the job, all the things that you think would be important for you to know and understand about that company, having those answers and that information in advance would be very helpful. There's no reason why you should be interviewing for a job and walking into an opportunity without having some context of what the job is, the company that you're interviewing for, and some basic information about what's required for you. You basically have the opportunity to have the answers to the test, right? Which is something that you want to be able to have walking into any of these situations. Preparing could also require you to have some sample answers to questions that might be normally asked. Where would you find such things? You find those things on Google. Go into your Google browser and type typical interview questions. That's what we use in HR, basic screening questions and things that you might be asked that are things that you would normally get asked in an interview. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What kind of things do you like to focus on in your jobs? What things do you think you do well? What things do you want to work on? What type of people do you like to work with? What kind of boss do you like to work for? What kind of boss do you not like to work for? Those are all things that are relatively easy in terms of knowing. I'm not saying that every job that you interview for, that those are all going to be exactly the same, but practicing is going to help you with that. Now, I find that this deck is kind of interesting because it's probably a few years old. It says videotape yourself on your smartphone. FaceTime is obviously something you could also do. Zoom with a friend and go through like an example like that. Those are all types of things that you could do to help prepare yourself for the actual interview itself. There are plenty of resources through Google. You can find information about the company you're interviewing for on LinkedIn and Glassdoor. Glassdoor is basically the TripAdvisor or the Yelp for companies, where you can find information about the company that you're actually interviewing for. They all have reviews and ratings and information about what it's like to work for them. So you could use that information to your own benefit. If you go on there and you find out that there is a lot of negative reviews about the company, that's something that you should be taking into consideration when you're applying for the job. LinkedIn is a very important tool. You'll be able to find other people on LinkedIn who are in similar roles to the one that you're applying for. What do their profiles look like? What kind of jobs did they come from? Does that match the type of job that you have been in before? Is that something that you've had experience with, whether it's working in a similar type of company or in a similar type of role? These are all things that you can find out just by knowing the job that you're interviewing for and the company that you're interviewing for. There's another good thing about LinkedIn. You could see who you know that works there, or if you know people who know people that work there. You can find out the connections that you have through LinkedIn and find out in advance if you can get an opportunity to talk to anybody that's at that company to say, what is it like to work there? I'm meeting with Fred Strobel. He works in HR. Can you tell me anything about him? Is there any chance you can put in a good word for me? It's basically the best opportunity for you to use to get information about the company, the people, and then of course in Glassdoor, the reviews that you might have an opportunity to see a little bit more about the company walking in the door. Next, we're going to talk about networking, which is something that John excels at, so we're going to turn it over to him.
Yeah, and I want to thanks, Fred. I want to elaborate on a couple things there as far as the preparation and the interview and questioning. To Fred's smartphone point, it's so easy to record yourself, and a lot of the times you're getting a lot of similar questions. A lot of the times you're talking about similar parts of your background that it is more difficult sometimes in this virtual world, because you can't see cues of people's maybe their physical body movements. You're not there with them to feel the energy in the room. And so really having purpose to your preparation and your questioning and how you talk about your background is going to be key. And it's so easy to do, and it works so well. I do it all the time, and it honestly has made me much better and more concise, as I tend to ramble on sometimes, or often. But I think also when you're thinking about your questions for your different roles, I mean, obviously you're doing research on the companies and on the company and the website and the sites that Fred mentioned. But think about the position too, right? Think about the role as they're describing it. And ask questions about the role. Yes, it's good to maybe ask about the company's culture and some big things that maybe you saw in the news and articles, something recent that could be noteworthy. But the reality is you're there for a specific position, and you don't want to spend a lot of time talking about the company or what the CEO is doing, because that's not what you're there for. And you're there to tell them and show them that you're best fit for that specific position. And the best way to do that is by asking questions about that role, because one company will talk about, we'll describe an operations associate one way, and another company will describe it another way. And sometimes they mean very similar things, just described differently, but sometimes they're very different. So asking about the group, how many people are in it, the structure, and really focusing on the day-to-day, understanding what they want you to do, and putting it on them. Be a peer, because now you're a business professional. And to be a business professional, you have to have thoughtful answers. And to have thoughtful answers, you have to understand what you're saying, and what you're answering. And questions can mean different things to different people. So, really getting them to break down and explain as much about the role as possible. So you could then almost have a blueprint of, like, okay, this is what they're looking for. This is the skill sets. This is what these fancy words and company language, vernacular really means to them. And then you say, okay, well, I know what I've done in my past, or what I have in my, skill sets, or what I studied at school that apply to that. And you're really able to start showing why you fit into the role and why you're a good fit for the role. Or maybe you're not a good fit for the role, but it's good to understand that too, by understanding what that role really is. moving along to networking, I think it's actually, Fred, can we go to two? I really want to touch on that first. It's one of the key points, for me at least. The hardest thing to do, and if you've heard this, if you heard Fred and I speak before, you've heard me go on and on about, staying positive through the job search process. It's tough, but it's so key in every stage of life. You've got to focus on the process and not the results. It's so easy to have a couple emails or go to a job interview and not get it and get upset. I mean, obviously that's not fun and get bogged down by that, but it truly is a volume game, and there's a million reasons why you don't get the role. And so you can't take it personally. You got to know that you just got to keep doing it, get better every time, and roll with the punches, which I'm sure many of you are pretty good at and have had to do for a very long time. So the more you can remind yourself that, hey, it's going to take time, and you can deal with it. You identify that it's a pain in the ass process, and it's a lot of work. It's not very gratifying for a while. But then when you find that job that's a great fit, and you find that company, and you find a great boss like Fred, you say, okay, this was all worth it. And then you start to say, okay, you know what? Those other jobs I interviewed for that I didn't get, those weren't right, and that wasn't the best fit for me. And now I'm here, and it starts to make sense. So that's one thing I could tell you. It's the hardest thing to do, but stay positive, because you need to be positive on these interviews. You need to be positive when you're networking, when you're meeting people, when you're out. Trying to get to sleep at night, waking up in the morning. Positivity is the only thing that's going to keep you moving forward and keep your head clear and focus with purpose. So whatever you're doing, focus on the process and not the initial results you may see, because you got to know it takes time. So moving along, I told you I tend to go off on tangents, but moving along to networking. Look, LinkedIn, like Fred said, is a very powerful tool. There's so many ways with social media these days to get your name out there, good and bad. Make sure you're not doing it in the bad ways. Make sure you're, not posting stuff on Instagram or whatever that you wouldn't want a boss to see, because the reality is a lot of them are checking that stuff these days. And the flip side is you put the good stuff there and they check it, and it's helpful. So think about the brand that you're trying to create, and leverage a network. With Fred and I alone, you've got probably 100,000 second degree connections. Or third degree connections, I should say, on LinkedIn. And so just connecting with us on LinkedIn, will immediately increase your network. And I think the important thing when reaching out to people and networking is to show empathy, be a peer, and be respectful of their time, and really ask questions, just like the interview, that matter. And it's not a time for you to talk about, how great you are at chess or saxophone or anything. It's a time to ask them, respectfully for some time, to maybe tell you a little bit about their career and how they got there, and understand different organizations and businesses, because you want to be educated when you get to the interview. You want to be educated and prepared when you have phone calls with people that you find on LinkedIn, to show that you are thinking about this with purpose and intent. And, you're doing everything you can, which is a lot. But I'll tell you what, too, the research and work you do now on the first, 100 companies that maybe you don't get the job with, that information's all going to be your own intellectual property that you're going to use throughout your career. So the more you educate yourself, whether it's about other companies or how businesses work or different industries, just because you don't get hired in that industry right now doesn't mean it's not going to be very valuable into the future when you're, looking to expand and grow some bigger roles. Use college, use whatever excites you to connect with people that might be similar as you, and have some unique experiences that you'd like to learn about and benefit from.
Yeah, John. So I think when you're actually going through the process of doing your networking and you're preparing yourself for your conversations, we referenced this a little bit in the beginning, right? These are like things that are kind of table stakes out there for you, right? So it used to be, 25 years ago, trying to find out information about a company was hard, right? It's not hard anymore. So all this information is stuff that should be things that you know about before you walk in the door, right? So, have yourself a little cheat sheet, information, notepad that has, when I say walk in the door, I mean virtual door these days. I was laughing at these pictures. I'm like, wow, these pictures look so like 2019, right? People standing around, talking to each other, holding drinks. I mean, that's so ridiculous looking, right? So making sure that you have the age of the organization, what they do for a living, to the extent that you can identify any problems or needs, locations, parent organization, subsidiary. These are all kind of basic things that you should know, right? Um, why are you here, right? Which I know that sounds like well, I want a job. Okay, yeah, that's great. You want a job. Awesome. Why are you interested in working in this company? Why do you want to work there? What do you know about the organization? Why do you think you'd like the job? You're basically somebody who has to figure out a way to market yourself, right? And marketing yourself really just makes you feel like you have a way of selling who you are, what you're doing, and why you think you'd be the right person for this role. Now, like anything else in life, right? Um, the way I look at interviews is it's all a facade. It's not reality. Okay, it's a staged process. Now, it's even more staged now than it was before, just because of the fact you've got the video component of it, right? So it's obviously even harder than it was. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But the truth is, like, you want to be able to take your experiences, the things that you've done in the past, and turn that into the reasons why you think you'd be a good candidate for that role, right? Even if you've never done anything like the job that you're interviewing for, right? But you've got to draw upon the things that you feel like the best things about you and how they correlate to the job that you are applying for, right? So if you said, okay, what's the best part about me? Say you're starting out, you've been only working 1 or 2 years, and you've worked as a customer service representative and you're applying for a sales job, right? And you'd say, I've never really sold anything, I've just been a service person. Okay, well, what are the good things about you as a customer service person? Well, I'm really attentive and I'm a good listener. I understand clients' needs. I have an understanding of what the products are, so I can explain the different types of qualities of the products that my company offers. And I know that there's opportunities when I'm speaking to customers to be able to provide them some information that make them want to buy something that they didn't buy before, right? That's a customer service representative's spin on why they should be a good sales representative potential candidate. Now, I did that very quickly, right? But basically, you got to take a piece of paper, right? And write down on one side of the paper what you're good at, what you've done well at, right? And what types of things you think you would be able to do well in the job that you're applying for, right? And that match, and the more comfortable you are with that match, the more comfortable you will be in the interview process, right? Um, if you walk in and say you're an expert when you're not an expert, they're going to know you're lying, right? So I was at Morgan Stanley for 15 years before I got to TradeWeb, and I was a seniorish HR person at Morgan Stanley. And there's a lot of seniorish HR people at Morgan Stanley, so I wasn't exactly anything special, right? I never ran a benefits department before. Now, I knew what benefits were. I know it's like medical, dental, life insurance, 401k, but I never actually ran a benefits department before. So when I was interviewing for the TradeWeb job, they're like, "Hey, so how do you feel about running a benefits department?" And I'm like, "I know benefits. I know them pretty well. I've worked in and around them my entire career because I'm an HR person. And I feel like, based off of my experiences, even though I've never done it before, I'm resourceful enough to be able to figure it out." I was honest. Never ran it, never did it before. I was around it, but never really necessarily was responsible for it. but I expressed a confidence that I would be able to do it, right? Those are the types of things that people look for in the interview process when trying to understand what it is that you can do, and also not trying to explain things that you can't do. If you can't do something or you don't know something, it's okay. You don't have to make it up. Just be humble, admit it, and move on to the next question, which is something that you have to remember you're going through this process. Um, to the extent that you can get this information, usually you can. Knowing that salary information in advance is helpful. There's nothing worse than applying for a job that's too low of a salary that you're never going to accept. It's a waste of your time. It's a waste of their time. So having that information in advance is helpful. Not everybody wants to give that to you, just so you know. So don't be too upset if you don't get it. But if you can get it, that's great. Getting an understanding of the job description. Usually it's posted someplace. And if it's not, you could ask the recruiter about it. Finding out who you're interviewing with and what they do, the title, the pronunciation of the name and their position. Drawing up a list of questions for each person in the organization is an important thing to have. They should be different. You don't have to ask an exhaustive list of questions. Most people don't want to answer them anyway, but they want to have at least one or two questions for you to make it like at least appear that you thought through what it was going to be like to talk to the person. So those are all things that you can focus on ahead of time. Resumes are very important for a lot of reasons. And I'm just going to say something that, you know, I think John referenced before about LinkedIn connections and he and I and everything else. I've said this now 9 years running, okay? You guys could all be LinkedIn connections to me, right? You could all be LinkedIn connections to John. I'll offer it because he usually says the same thing. This is not like Facebook. It's not like Instagram. It's not like Snapchat. LinkedIn is a professional connection network, right? So because you're all involved in Tuesday's Children, we're involved in Tuesday's Children, you could be a connection to either one of us. And you can leverage and reach out to us and ask us for help and assistance and connecting to anybody that we know. Just so you know, I don't really know everybody that I'm connected to on LinkedIn. That's kind of how it works. I know a lot of people, but I don't know everybody. So if I get back to you and say I can try, but I don't really know if I know that person, that's okay. It's going to happen sometimes, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't try. I offer that to every one of these sessions. I've been doing it every time I've done it. I would say, generally speaking, approximately 10% of you do it. 90% of you don't. I never really know why. The 10% of you that do include John Egan, so good for him. He somehow made his way to being my cohort in this whole thing. I'm not sure if you want to be my cohort someday in doing this process, but I will say for the people who do follow through and connect and take advantage of the Career Resource Center resources that Tuesday's Children offers you, it's not a guarantee that you're going to get a job or a better job. You're going to get success through the process, but we definitely have people who care and try to help you as much as possible. So some people follow through and do it. Some people don't. That extends out to all of the families, including the moms, right? I've helped and worked with all levels of people at all different stages of their career. And that includes resume review, LinkedIn profile review, all of that stuff, which you can see listed here on this piece of paper on PowerPoint, okay? Resumes are tricky. There's 1,000, maybe 1,000,000 templates online. Look through all of the templates and copy the one you like the best. There is no reason that you should be creating your own. Plagiarism is completely encouraged here. Use the format. It's not that hard. No typos, no more than one page per 10 years of experience. If you have 30 years of experience, you still try to want to get it into 2 pages if you can. And you definitely want to make sure it's as tight as possible. No typos, it's a killer, okay? People don't really use resumes much anymore. They're starting to morph almost completely to LinkedIn. So if you don't have a LinkedIn profile, you definitely need one. You need to have a professional picture, not one with your arm around your significant other. I haven't looked at any of yours, so I'm not going to call any of you out. But you need to make sure that this does not represent the same type of picture you have on your other social media apps, okay? It is clearly different. Take a picture of yourself and wearing something decent up against a white wall and put it on LinkedIn. It's completely fine. You don't got to spend money and have a professional photo done. Make sure your hair is combed appropriately. Make sure you're wearing something that looks halfway professional looking, and you'll be completely fine, right? There's no magic to it. However, your LinkedIn should match your resume. There shouldn't be discrepancies. It shouldn't say one thing on one thing and one thing on another thing. And again, the last point on here is wait, you don't have one. Because if you don't, you need to. So make sure, I think at this stage for all of you on this call that you have one. And if you haven't had one because you haven't worked for a while, you need to have one as well.
And Fred, I'll build on that a little bit too. First of all, the point you made about taking advantage of the resources, including us. I want to emphasize there's a lot of people, Tuesday's Children, that work there, that volunteer, they're involved in one way or another. You're doing yourself a disservice if you're not reaching out to all of us and trying to take advantage, and not just with that, but also following up. It's all about thoughtful. Sometimes, Fred or I will have something going on. I'm getting married in 11 days, baby coming in a few months. And so, if you catch me at the wrong time, I may miss an email. The people at Tuesday's Children will tell you that I am good at missing emails sometimes because I've just got a crazy amount of volume. But when I see it, when it comes, if I see it the second time, I realize I missed it the first time, I'm all over it. So there is value to follow-ups. Just because they didn't get a response the first time, and this isn't just with the TC folks, this is with anybody. There is value to follow-ups. There's value to working that process. With regards to the resume, I think there's a lot of opportunity. I always was a big advocate of trying to cater the resume. Obviously, you want your resume to line up with your LinkedIn, but I do think there's ways when you're applying to jobs to say, okay, you know what, I'm applying to, one project management role, one sales role, and one, administrative role. And you could be a good fit for all of them in one way or another. It could make sense. And so I think there's ways to talk about, maybe the clubs and activities that you were involved in college, and use different language, and use the company's language. Because often, they'll be talking about, some places will call project management. Some will call it business analyst. Some, they'll have some different words. And so I think you make it almost easy because people see so many resumes. Maybe not anymore. I guess Fred would know better than I would. But to spell it out for them, to make it easy, talk about your background honestly, clearly, but to use some of the verbiage and vernacular that seems to be common in their website or their job description, because it just makes it easier for people to identify that stuff. And I think especially when you've got, it's a really good fit or a job you really want, or you've got, an introduction, or it's my company locked in, or Fred's trade web, and it makes sense. You want to make the extra effort on those, especially to make it easy and try and get yourself the interview. Because going back to process, the interview, the resume is what's going to get you, and the LinkedIn profile is what's going to get you the interview. And then once you get the interview, that's more work on the process you got to do. But it's the more work, the more prep you do before the interview, the better your interview is going to go. The more work you do on your resume to cater it to a specific job, and not just think that the one resume is going to fit every job, especially if you're looking at 10 different ones the same, you're going to get a better hit rate.
Yeah, I'm laughing as you're talking about preparing for the interview, and I was reading this next slide and chuckling to myself because of all the funny things that don't really exist anymore. At least they don't.
Well, yeah, I mean, it still applies. You have to wear a very nice shirt, but you don't have to wear pants anymore. So right, exactly. It makes it easier.
Exactly right. I do think we will wind up at some point, hopefully by the end of this year, going back to this mattering. So we're going to cover it anyway. I do think, in a way, as somebody who definitely in the last few years working for a fintech company versus working for an investment bank, had to adjust some of my approach to wardrobe and adapting to the way things are today. I do think it's important for you to know, especially as we go back into the new phase of life after COVID, to ask questions of the recruiter that you're talking to about what's appropriate from a wardrobe perspective. It's okay to ask, because whether it's the Zoom interview that you're not sure, or the in-person interview that you'll eventually hopefully have, when things go back to normal, it's okay to ask, and it's always okay to overdress. Okay. Typically speaking, underdressing for a job is obviously something that you want to be most cautious about. Making sure that you're prepared and not having to worry about it and putting on your best show is the best way to do things. I talk about knowing the location, the travel location where you're going to before you're going. That applies to Zoom calls too. I won't tell you the amount of people that I interview, that I have a scheduled Zoom interview with, that for some reason it pops up that they're in the Zoom meeting 15 minutes before the meeting starts. And I laugh because I'm like, I wonder if they went to one of my Tuesday children things and said they tested it out 15 minutes before to make sure that it works, right? I think generally speaking, the entire world is okay with the kids screaming, dogs barking, doorbell ringing, Amazon person showing up, spouse walking in the background, fan going on. Oh my God, what's that noise outside? I can't believe the fire truck is outside. What happened? I'm in the middle of the interview. How embarrassing is that? Okay. If the person on the other end of the Zoom call isn't okay with that or doesn't understand that, you might have to think twice about whether you want to work there. That's just my opinion. Okay. Everybody kind of gets it. Everybody knows that these are different times. So making sure that this stuff as you go into post-COVID is important, but just something you have to worry about. I kind of set myself up for this slide. Top tips for the virtual interview. Make sure you know what medium you're on: phone, iPad, laptop, desktop. Test it out beforehand if you can. Try to get a quiet place. Don't underdo it. I talked about this already. Life happens, apologize, correct, move on, confirm what next steps are, what plans are if the company doesn't plan to return to work soon. It's okay to ask the questions about what they're doing now and what the future plans are in terms of where the job is. Is the job going to be in an office full time? Do you not know yet? Is it going to be remote full time? Is it going to be a hybrid? You might get a very interesting answer asking right now, because most companies, I just had this webinar with 150 HR people last week, and I'm happy to say that they're all as clueless as I am. So I think that generally speaking, most places are still not entirely sure what their plans are, but it's okay to ask. Okay. Here's my investment banking slide. Clean pressed business suit or dress, clean shoes, minimal or no cologne, professional bag. The Morgan Stanley doesn't ever completely leave me. This probably is not necessarily as appropriate as it used to be. But I will say, I interviewed a guy for a role on Monday. What's today? Is today Tuesday? Today Tuesday already? Yesterday was Monday? It's not Friday yet? Wow. Okay. I interviewed a guy yesterday and he wore a suit, and I was like, wow. It's like, a suit? That's incredible. I can't believe that. So, impressing people would never hurt you if it doesn't cost you anything. If you're going in person to the interview, bring extra resumes. Always expect to have a few just in case you get introduced to a few more people. Make sure you focus in, and we talked about this earlier, 3 to 5 key strengths. Have your questions. Have a neat notepad or portfolio, someplace to take notes, something that just is easy to bring with you so that you have a place to write stuff down. You don't have to write stuff down, but if you feel like you want to, just make sure you hit key notes. That's completely fine. I have a few slides on here about behavior-based interviewing, and I don't really spend an entirely long period of time going through this stuff. It's just something to be aware of, just so you know, kind of this is one of the things that a lot of people in what I would call the HR world that take interviewing very seriously focus on doing this type of stuff. Basically, a behavior-based interviewer is looking for a way to predict your future behavior by asking you questions about things that you've done in the past. They're basically asking you for a detailed description from you on how you handled yourself in a certain situation And in that situation, there really is no right or wrong answer in terms of how exactly you handle or manage your questions. You're going to be asked to recall in detail what you did, thought, or felt in those situations as if you were reliving them. And it helps the interviewer better understand your thought process, your decision making skills, your emotional state, as well as the results of your actions. So it'd probably be helpful for you to write the words down, BBI process, behavioral based interviewing, and look up on Google, because Google has everything, a few examples of types of questions that some interviewers may ask so you could at least practice it. Okay. There is no right answer, there's no wrong answer, there's no like, did I do this the right way or the wrong way? They're looking to see your thought process. Okay. So it's just something for you to think about. They will try to pressure you. And the pressure is something you really can't be prepared for because you don't know exactly what they're going to ask you. But that's okay. If you practice and you look up what a BBI interview is and you would put down a few ideas of how you would respond, I think that would be completely fine. One of the key pieces of this is going through a STAR answer, which is basically describing an overview of the situation, talking about the task, describing the action you took, and giving a positive result. Okay? So, customer calls with a complaint, isn't happy with the product, calls you and starts screaming and yelling. How did you handle it? Well, the customer started calling, screaming, and yelling. I basically tried to calm the person down, explain to them that I listened to all their concerns. They kept yelling. I asked if they wanted to speak to a manager. They didn't want to talk to a manager. They want to talk to me. I decided that I would provide them some information about the product that they didn't know about, blah, 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 blah. Turned it around, got the person to be relatively happy with the information I provided. That was the positive result, right? There are some questions here that I don't know if we give this out after. I think we do, Kathy or Deanna, but I think that probably be the best thing is to have this information available to you guys afterwards. So these are different types of commonly asked BBI interview questions. But like my kids say to me, I basically answer most things with you can find it on Google if you look for it. It's not that hard. I feel that way about this as well.
I'll add there to YouTube. If there is a job you are looking at, there's a company you're looking at, if you're looking for tough interview questions and responses, YouTube it. You pretty much learn anything on YouTube. I learned so much about different industries that I'm trying to get business in from YouTube all the time. And, you know, I spent some time listening and watching those, and I all of a sudden sound like I know what the heck I'm talking about. And I think it's so easy to fall into a frame of thinking that like, oh, that's not my specialty. Oh no, I don't understand this stuff. And you know, say, well, I'm a hard worker, I'm willing to learn and all that. Like, okay, like that's all fine. And like if that's true, that's great. But like if you're a hard worker, if you're interested, you can find the information. And it's, you know, and I know it's daunting to think about all these resumes and emails and LinkedIn connections and interviews and all that stuff, and you still haven't gotten a paycheck yet. You know, assuming you're not working at the moment. But it's so worth it. And it goes back to what I was saying too before. This practice, learning, reading, listening to these videos, these podcasts, it's, you can learn so much, and you just give yourself a sense of confidence, you know, and that's the hardest thing, the positivity and the confidence. And when you can arm yourself and know that you've put in the time and you've done all the work, that you show up with the confidence, you have confident conversations. It's when you don't do the work and you haven't done the research, and then you're on the interview and you're like, well, you know, I was really good at this, and like I'm, you know, again, I'm a hard worker and I'm a really good guy. It's all good, but you know, you can get over a lot of those hurdles by really spending time, and then everything's just available on YouTube and all over the internet these days. So take advantage of that. And you're all, most of you, I'm sure, are much younger than me and probably pretty good at that stuff already. So maybe you know that.
Yeah, it's amazing the amount of things you can find on YouTube as well. It's a good point, John. I think that these things become easier the more resourceful you become by looking things up on your own. But I think that it's a good another suggestion of places you can find things. So this is again kind of like the typical stages of an interview process: introductory stage, qualifications, background assessment stage, organizational information stage, and termination stage. We're just going to take you through these just quickly. Everybody want to laugh at the first one? Shake hands. No one's shaking hands ever again. It's never going to happen. Elbow bump, maybe, if you're lucky. Awkward wave from the other side of the room. Should I leave my mask on or not? So these are obviously the pre-2020 version of introductory stages, but maybe we'll get back to shaking hands again, but I doubt it. Obviously, first impressions are important. Making a strong first impression is important. All these things used to matter. The positive attitude and enthusiasm has to be exhibited in a different way. Smiling means a lot. Being happy, being anxious to talk to the person, finding a common thing about them that they can relate to is also important. Again, not going to tell you to cheat too much by going to the internet to find out information, but you can know just about anything you want to know about the people you're interviewing with as well, where they went to school, easy connections, where they worked at before. If you guys have a common experience or where you worked before, have some ability to develop some rapport, right? So my boss at TradeWeb, I went in to interview with him. He had a Jet helmet on his credenza. I am a loser Jet fan. He is a loser Jet fan. Easy frame of reference to talk about how we're both losers and that he should hire me into this job so I could be a loser with him, right? So something like that. It doesn't have to be the loser Jet fan reference, okay? Basically, questions about, this is the qualification background assessment stage. Questions about your goals, your objectives, your education, your experience, your interests, your activities. Providing opportunity to provide an overview of your past performances. Try to give as many non-yes and no answers as possible. Don't fib, tell the truth. Provide as clear of an understanding of what you've done as you possibly can, and elaborate positively if you can. These are like the most common interview questions. And again, you can take a snapshot of this. You can take a picture of the screen. You can find these things just about anywhere. They're pretty run of the mill these days. It's not like there's anything really magical about this list at all. And honestly, a lot of recruiters, especially, and hiring managers are looking for gut feeling connection more than anything. They'd like to tell you that it's more scientific than that. Obviously, specific experience in a particular technical competency might be more important. But at the end of the day, some of these basics are the things you need to be able to be prepared to do. And if you do that, you're already halfway there. We talked about this stuff already. Organizational information. Finding out about the challenges facing the people in the position. Why is the job open? It's always a good question to ask, right? Did the person get promoted? Did the person cry and leave miserably because they hated it and they couldn't stand the role? Of course, they're not going to tell you that, but it's good to at least ask the question. What the performance criteria is, what's the culture like? Any type of thought-provoking questions like that would be helpful for you. Here's some more questions. How do you like working for the company? How are your new jobs or projects determined or evaluated? Tell me about your background and if working at your company has helped satisfy your career desires. All good questions, right? The one thing I will say more than anything that is a little tip for everybody, people love talking about themselves more than anything in the world. So you will never leave an interviewer in a negative way if you ask to talk about them. So if you ask about them, their experiences, what they like about the company, all of a sudden there's like a little smile on their face. Well, you want to talk about me? Let's talk about me, right? And you'll see, kind of a little glow. And that's a good impression for you to leave with the person that's interviewing you. Termination stage, you feel it's coming to a close, you feel it's coming to an end, finding out the next steps, express your enthusiasm, make sure you say thank you. I'm a big believer in a thank you email. The old days used to be a thank you letter, a thank you note. I'm a big believer in the thank you letter and the thank you note. The handwritten note is a lost art. I will embarrass Shay Mann, who is on the call. I saw her somewhere. She has been TradeWeb intern now 2 times in a row and has written more thank you notes than anybody I've ever met, and does it in a way that makes you want to just basically melt. So congratulations to her. It works. It makes people feel special. It makes people feel wonderful. And you basically, even if you don't get the job, leave a positive experience with the person. So email is expedient and fast, surely, in today's day and age. So obviously you want to get it out, right? One thing I will say, make sure you do not make a typo. Make sure you do not have any grammatical errors. Send it to 4 friends, family members, somebody to check it to make sure that you got it right. Okay? You don't want it to have you shoot yourself in the foot by doing something that I think is a really good thing. Okay? This is another just basic rule. Interviewing rules of 3 strengths, 3 weaknesses, 3 reasons why somebody should hire you, and 3 reasons why you want the job. Just another good thing to have in your arsenal. And interview checklists. So research, practice, be prompt and prepared, act professionally, converse, be enthusiastic, thank the interviewer, follow up, write a thank you letter, review the interview process and your performance. And then the last thing on here before we go to Q&A, and I let John close out with the next slide. The interview process requires evaluation, but not just for the person you interviewed with. The interview process requires the evaluation from you too. Be an active participant in the process, right? Make sure the job works for you. Make sure it's what you're interested in. Make sure that you like the person that you talk to, or that you're interested in working in the place based on what you heard. You don't have to accept the job or the opportunity or the role if it's not something you're interested in, right? So when you're done and you're finished and you end the Zoom call, or you meet the person and you're leaving, you're getting back on the subway, hopefully someday again soon, or you get back into your car, think, is this still someplace I want to work, right? Because through the whole process, the one thing I want everyone to remember is that what you want and what you think is important for you is the most important part. They're evaluating you, but you're evaluating them. John, the king of the quotes.
I don't know where this one came from, but
I'm going to give it to you because you have all the great quotes and pictures. I just have the boring words.
yeah, I mean, look, it's what I was saying before. You're not focusing at the end of the journey, right? The end of your career, or whatever it is. You're focusing on one step at a time. You're focusing on the process. And the more that you can get excited about, hey, I just listened to a really cool podcast. Hey, I just connected with this, really interesting person on LinkedIn, and taking the little wins and not even thinking about them necessarily as a little win, but knowing that you're doing something to make yourself better, to learn. You're gonna be happier. You're gonna be more prepared. You're gonna be less stressed out. As soon as you're thinking, okay, I need to have a job in 4 weeks or 4 months, or whatever, you're then just focusing on the process. I mean, on the results, and you got to focus on the process, and that will get you there. If you plug and play, and it's a pain in the butt, but it gets easier over time, and it becomes more gratifying. And like I said, it's it's all good. You learning and all this. You're not going to, the career I had, my first job out of college, I was on the mortgage back desk. The second job, I was at a luxury concierge startup company. The third job was a Russian vodka company I was doing sales for. And then I went to grad school, and then I became a headhunter. And now I'm doing, which I think is going to be my final career move, which is, insurance brokerage and risk management. But there's just so many turns. There are things I liked and things I didn't like about all the jobs. There's things I like and things I don't like about my job. But I learned a lot through all of those things to prepare me to be better at what I'm doing now and what I'm going to try to do in the future. Please reach out to me. I'm happy to. I know Fred is, chime in on if you got an interview, or you want to take a look at the resume, or you see that we're connected to people. But get excited about this stuff, because it's pretty cool, and the more excited you get, the more interested you'll be in learning, and the better conversations you're going to have. You're going to make more connections with better people, and you're going to find the job that's truly, may not even be the first one, but you're going to end up in the career that is most gratifying to you and you're happiest in. So it's worth, the tough road and pounding the pavement to get there. And like I said, we're happy to help. I know it's a tough time sitting in front of computers all day and being stuck in the house I'm living with my mother right now. I'm down in Florida. I'm going to be 38 in April. But my fiance, as I mentioned, is pregnant. I'm living with her. It's not easy at any age. It's a tough time in the world right now. Everyone's feeling it. But to Fred's earlier point, there is opportunity to get in front of people virtually, and everyone's in front of their desk all the time now. So you can take advantage of that. And I hope you're doing well. I hope you're doing okay. Even if it's not a career question, feel free to reach out to me. I'll make sure they share my contact information. This organization, all of you mean a lot to me, and I wish you all the best, and I hope I can help you, and stay safe and stay sane. Although I'm not best at that, but good to chat with you. Hope we could answer some questions of yours too.
Yeah, we'd open up to any questions. You just got to take yourself off Zoom mute to do so if anybody wants to ask anything of us.
So, Fred, have they only been seeing your face, not mine?
You think I know the answer to that question? I have no idea. I don't know. I've been sharing my screen. I should stop sharing it. Let's see. Can I do that without disconnecting the entire world? Stop share. How's that? Did that work?
I think.
Oh my God, it's been a year. I'm getting so good at this. It's not even funny. Anybody have any questions? Okay. No one? So I've said this before. Fred.Strobel at tradeweb.com. Tradeweb's all one word. TRADE. I can't spell. WEB at .com. Don't try to email John because it gets bounced back. Just ask Deanna to send it to you and then he also said he doesn't respond to emails anyway. So I'll send your stuff on to John. Kidding.
No, you can send it to my work email. That's jjegan@lockton.com. And then, get me on LinkedIn. I'm seeing that all the time. Connect with me, send me messages, keep me posted. If it's not tomorrow, it could be in 6 weeks, 6 months, whatever. But, happy to help. And I know it's I know it's a process and it's never easy, and that's that's life though. And so it's why you find people that you want to surround yourself with that are good people that you can learn from, and are going to help in any way they can. And you've got a lot of those folks at Tuesday's Children organization, and I know I've learned a lot from the younger people that I've mentored that know a lot about a lot of things I don't know. So I look forward to learning from you too.
Same here. So reach out, let us know if we can help. More than willing to spend some time with you guys getting on a Zoom call and talking about what you're dealing with, how I can assist you, and what we can do to help advance your career. So, Deanna, I'm going to turn it back to you.
Sure. There is actually one question in the chat. It was posted earlier. It says, what are your tips on time gaps in work experience after job layoffs? And then for job seekers over 45.
Yeah, so a few things. I think the way I deal with job gaps is straight on. You just say, 2005 to 2015, focused on raising my family caregiver, or something like that. But if you want to send me your resume and have me help you with that, that's more than okay. I think for people who are like over 45 looking for jobs and you haven't looked for a while, or you haven't, been focused on a job search, there's different ways of doing it, and there's different expectations you should have about how to do it. My first Tuesday's Children event, I met a family that I helped, three sisters, and then after the three sisters kind of moved through the process, I helped the mom, and she hadn't worked for maybe 10 years at that point. And I think it's a different type of experience going through that type of search, but it doesn't mean that it's not possible. You just might have to look at it a little differently, right? And I think that the thing you got to keep in mind if you're looking for a role and looking to get back to a workforce, or you've been out after a layoff, to never apologize about what's happened to you, or about where you are, about what you want. There's no reason to apologize for it, right? And if people in the world that I work in don't get that, then you don't want to work with them. That's it. Life happens, things happen, things change, circumstances change. And you either take people for who they are and the merit that they have. So I think that you have to be able to exemplify who you are, what you're doing, what you've done. And whether it's raising a family, or somebody just put in here volunteer work, or being involved in something at the school system, you've done something, even if it's just being who you are, and we'll figure out a way to best present that, right? So there has been in the past this kind of thought process about the stigma attached to those people being able to find things. I don't buy it anymore, right? So yeah, we'll find a way to get past that together.
Yeah, I think the environment's changed a lot, obviously, in a lot of ways, and there's a lot of different types of opportunities these days, and people are hiring. There's business. There's a lot of businesses that are growing. There's a lot of businesses that are not doing well, but there are a lot of businesses that are doing very well, and they're looking for strong candidates, strong people with different experiences. I think it's about marketing it, but I think it's also, to Fred's point, marketing yourself, being your own advocate. I think it's important, really, at any level, to reach out to people at organizations and do it in a thoughtful manner. Also give people the out, but look, if maybe I'm not right for this, but based on the description, I thought that, this is something I could, this is something that I'd be able to, very good at. And, I'm highly skilled in the areas you're looking. And if it doesn't make sense for any, I'd love to have a conversation to learn more. If it doesn't make sense, no worries, because people, I think, when you show that confidence to say, hey, look, I don't want to waste my time, and I want you to just take the call just to talk to me so I can feel good about interview. It's not helping anybody out. If you want to have a serious conversation about, how my skill set may be able to fit into this role, then great, let's do that. But if that's not going to happen, that's okay too. And I think there's a lot of value in kind of giving folks the out and just plugging and playing until you find the people that do want to have that conversation. And then that's when good conversations happen.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anytime.
Anybody else? Okay, you guys know where to find us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I also put some information in our chat box. We have some programs coming up within the next month or so. We have our Armed Services Academy program on March 23rd, and I put the link into our calendar on our website up so you can RSVP for that as well, along with our Take Our Children to Work Day, which is ages 6 to 18. It will be virtual this year, obviously, for the first time. So we're very excited. We'll have multiple companies and organizations on there that you'll be interested in, depending on which survey you fill out and whatnot. So that also can be collected on our calendar to RSVP for that. And then we have one other survey for our Career Resource Center that is super important to us, to better serve you and, to give you programs that you guys are interested in. So please fill out that survey as well. And, thank you so much for attending, and we hope to see you again.